I'm Drucifer, and I'm going to give you a detailed crash course of every killer in DbD, whether you're searching for a new main, you filthy little tunneler, or you're looking to understand counterplay, you dirty little survivor main. All killer powers described will be base kit, not under the influence of add-ons, and we're going to go in the order of release. Also, I've created some character cards for each killer, which go over their movement speed, some general stats, their power mastery difficulty, and their current pick rate. We have 41 killers to get through. Chapters are over in the description, so let's go. The Trapper. Evan uses his power of bear traps to trap survivors.
Groundbreaking.
Shocking, I know. He begins the trial with 2 traps already in his inventory and an additional 8 scattered across the map, the aura of which he can see at all times. He can carry up to 2 traps, and if you're the survivor, you know he has a trap in his inventory if you see a trap in his hand. After setting a trap, he gains a short haste, which is DbD's way of buffing the use of his rudimentary power. Any survivor that gets caught in a trap can attempt to free themselves at a low success rate or can be set free by another survivor guaranteed. The trapper can also get caught in his own traps, which isn't unheard of since the killer's hitbox is larger than a survivor's. Survivors can disarm placed traps at the cost of 3.5 seconds. During the disarm animation, another survivor can run over an active trap so long as the disarm continues to play out.
What's your leg? Ah, it's caught in a bear trap.
The Wraith. Bing Bong uses the power of the Wailing Bell to cloak and play the match as DbD's first undetectable killer. While cloaked, the Wraith moves at 150 speed, is unable to attack survivors but can interact with kicking and breaking prompts such as destroying pallets, breakable walls, and kicking gens. Survivors can't see the Wraith when he's further than 20 meters away, but when he's within this range, they'll see a Predator-esque shimmer and hear the quiet chitter of his breathing. He can be pallet stunned out of power while cloaked, which stuns him for twice as long as a normal stun duration. Lastly, while he's cloaked, chase doesn't begin, and he cannot accumulate bloodlust. To uncloak and attack survivors, the Wraith plays out a 3-second bell ringing animation, which slows him down greatly, followed up by a 1-second 7-meter dash. When uncloaked and during the cloak animation, the Wraith moves at a standard 115 speed. Lastly, the Wraith doesn't lose collision during cloak or uncloak, which makes him an S-tier body blocker at the cost of a no-ed addiction. The Hillbilly. Billy is the first killer ever to use a chainsaw as a means of transport, moving around the map at the speed of, or just over 10 meters per second if we're being technical. If Billy collides with a survivor during a chainsaw sprint, it results in an instant down. Billy needs just over 2 seconds to completely charge his saw, but he can edge the timer to begin the sprint when he's in the optimal position. His chainsaw curves quickly at the start of his sprint, and this turn ability decays near instantaneously. When you hear this chime, it means that Billy is in overdrive, which buffs his rev speed, his sprint speed, and reduces the cooldown of his saw for a time. The Nurse. The Nurse uses her power of Spencer's Last Breath to break all the laws of DbD and dominate the killer roster, even with the asthma. The Nurse's power is blinking, or leaving point A to arrive at point B, ignoring any and all megs in her path. She has 2 blinks, with the first giving her a travel distance of up to 20 meters, the second up to 12 meters. These blinks are the only way to play Nurse because outside of blinking, she moves slower than a survivor. You know the first blink is fully charged once the Nurse closes her left hand, and releasing M2 will send her forward in the direction she's facing, be it upstairs, downstairs, through walls, wherever. There's a short 1.5-second window to charge the second blink before she succumbs to fatigue, where her FOV is forced to the ground, her screen darkens, and she's slowed until the fatigue ends. While the Nurse does ignore all obstacles, she can only blink to walkable areas on the map and cannot blink past edge map. Once a blink is charging, it cannot be cancelled, only shortened. You can look downward to shorten your blink or look straight up if you're on the 2nd floor to avoid being sent downstairs. Fun fact, the Nurse screams after every blink because they're incredibly painful, but nothing is as painful as being in a nurse lobby. The Shape. Or Michael Myers as we all know him, is DbD's first ever licensed stalker with the power of evil within, and of course, those size 15 grippers.
Daddy, chill.
Myers was recently reworked, so I'm gonna avoid some of the numbers on him since adjustments are still being made to his kit. In short, he has 3 modes he swaps between. In Stalker mode, Michael is undetectable and can stalk survivors with a slower movement speed. In Pursuer mode, he has a small terror radius, walks faster, and has a buff to his lunge range and speed of breaking, damaging, and vaulting. His 3rd mode is Evil Incarnate and can be activated manually once his power gauge is full. In this mode, he has the largest terror radius and can execute standing or down survivors who have reached the 2nd hook state with a mini-mori I like to call uppies. In order to fill his power gauge, Michael has to stalk survivors in his line of sight and within range. While stalking, a survivor's aura is highlighted in white, and as of now, he stalks faster from further away and while standing still. If the power gauge is not filled completely, it will decay to a max 50% if no survivor has been stalked within a period of time. Post Dash Slop rework era, he now comes equipped with an attack called Slaughtering Strike. While an evil incarnate, he can activate this dash attack. If he hits a survivor, they'll be put in the dying state regardless of health status. If he hits a breakable wall or dropped pallet, it will break. After being used, Slaughtering Strike goes on a short cooldown. The Hag. The Hag uses the power of her phantasm traps to create a web around the map. She starts the trial with 10 traps already in her inventory, take it personally Evan, and can reuse already placed traps whenever she likes by drawing a new one and automatically erasing the old. Placing a trap takes just under 2 seconds, and each comes with an area of effect only the Hag can see and a survivor must trigger for the Hag to gain value from. When a survivor triggers the trap, their camera is pointed at a mud phantasm that spawns from the trap. If the Hag is within 48 meters of that trap, she can instantly teleport and lunge at the survivor, always facing the direction of the survivor who triggered the trap. Survivors can remove the Hag's traps by crouching up to them and wiping them away, which takes 4 seconds in total. Outside of these traps, the Hag moves at 110 speed, meaning she's slower than average killers and struggles in traditional chases. The Doctor. Dr. Carter is DbD's first anti-loop killer noob stomper, shocking survivors into madness with his power of Carter's Spark. His name is Herman. He tears up survivor madness with 2 special abilities. Shock Therapy is a chase shock with a 12-meter range which will stun survivors out of vaulting and dropping for 2.5 seconds, and every successful hit will increase that survivor's madness tier by half a level. His second shock is Static Blast, which is largely used as an information shock with its 32-meter radius, but successfully shocking survivors will increase each madness tier by an entire level. Static Blast applies to the Doctor's terror radius, not the Doctor himself. Running perks that increase his terror radius or move it from the Doctor to a gen like Unforeseen or even a survivor like Dark Devotion will affect this part of his kit. Survivors are affected by 3 tiers of madness, which everyone can see on the HUD. In Madness 1, skill checks have a 1 in 3 chance of becoming madness checks, where they'll appear in random places on the screen and sometimes even Australian. In Madness 2, skill checks have a 2 out of 3 chance of becoming madness checks, and hallucinations will begin to appear around the survivor. It should be noted that the Doctor cannot see these hallucinations unless you're in the next tier. Madness 3. While in Max Madness, survivors suffer from all of the following debuffs. Survivors scream when entering Tier 3 Madness and intermittently while they remain in this tier. They generate Doctor hallucinations he can now see from anywhere on the map. They cannot use any equipped items or complete any repairing, unlocking, cleansing, or blessing. They can still perform the unhook action on other survivors. A survivor remains in Tier 3 Madness until they complete the snap out of it action, which takes 12 seconds and will always return the survivor to Madness 1. Once a survivor enters Madness 1, it's impossible to go back to 0 Madness for the duration of the trial. The Cannibal. Bubba uses the power of the chainsaw sweep to insta-down survivors who get caught in the path of his cutie patootie. Bubba starts the trial with 3 tokens to his saw and can activate chainsaw sweep after a short rev charge. During his sweep, his speed is increased, and each token extends his sweep by an additional 2.5 seconds. Unlike our other chainsaw-wielding man, Bubba can down multiple survivors with a single chainsaw sweep if he has enough tokens or if they're grouped up together. Revving the saw for too long or colliding with the environment will cause Bubba to tantrum, where he'll be slowed down greatly, and his saw will continue to run until the tantrum ends. The Huntress. The Huntress uses her power of hunting hatchets to start out DbD's ranged killers. The Huntress has 7 hatchets in her inventory to throw at survivors at varying speeds. Her slowest throw travels at 25 meters per second with a max arc. To throw at max speed, you hold the hatchet for an additional second to hear this chime, where it will fly at the max speed of 40 meters per second and with the tightest arc. The Huntress is slowed while winding up her hatchets, but outside of this she moves at 110, slightly slower than other DbD killers but pretty average for ranged ones. Her strength lies in her obvious ranged attack, which has very little cooldown and is easily followed up with an M1 attack if they don't use the haste to gain distance. The Huntress can reload her hatchets at any time and at any locker on the map, the aura of which will be revealed once her supply is fully exhausted. The Nightmare. Freddy is an anti-loop killer with decent map control and one of the more complicated kits after his rework. Sleep status is fully integrated in Freddy's kit and how his powers affect survivors. Survivors who use an alarm clock show a golden 30-second timer on the HUD and are immune from being put to sleep. Micro sleep, or the gray HUD timer, lasts for 60 seconds and will passively put the survivor to sleep when the timer runs out. Lastly, sleeping survivors with the dream HUD effect are in the dream world, which makes them susceptible to dream traps and makes them oblivious while also having to listen to Freddy's creepy-ass lullaby. Outside of these passive timers, an awake survivor will be put fully to sleep if Freddy lands a basic attack. There are a few ways that survivors can wake up. Survivors can wake each other up by playing out a 5-second animation, by finding an available alarm clock across the map, or by failing a skill check. As far as his powers go, there are 3 main tools he has besides his basic M1. The first are his dream snares, which are projectiles that advance awake survivors' sleep timers by 30 seconds, or they hinder sleeping survivors, slowing their speed, denying fast faults, and making them scream. These snares can pass through walls and obstacles and go downhill, however they can't go over gaps like the basement stairs. The second are dream pallets, which are fragile pallets Freddy can set up which replace previously used resources or spawn in on typical pallet spawns. Freddy can trigger these pallets to explode, which will put awake survivors fully to sleep or injure sleeping survivors if they're caught in the area of effect. His final power is Dream Projection, which Freddy can use to teleport to any gen on the map and also to survivors who are healing if even one of them is asleep. The Pig. The Pig is an ambushing stealth dash killer with traps. She uses her power of Jigsaw's Baptism, which grants her an undetectable crouch, a moderate dash she can easily redirect around loops, and the infamous reverse bear traps. The Pig has 0 cooldown on her crouch, which grants her undetectable after a short time and reduces her movement speed to just under a survivor. While in the crouch state, she can trigger Ambush, which she can easily redirect to sprint around obstacles to land that attack. The most complicated part of the Pig's kit are her reverse bear traps. The Pig starts the trial with 4 of these reverse bear traps in her inventory with a single use on any down survivor. Once used, they cannot be replenished. Once a survivor is put in the dying state, the Pig can place a reverse bear trap on their head. These traps are disarmed by default but become active when the next gen is completed. The trap timer is set to 150 seconds and reflected on the survivor's HUD icon. The timer will continue to count down unless the survivor enters chase with the Pig, is downed, or is on the hook. Regardless of whether the trap is active or disarmed, a survivor can interact with any of the 5 jigsaw boxes on the map they'll see highlighted in a white aura. There are different RNG chances of removing the trap at each box, but they are guaranteed to successfully remove the trap after completing the 4th box. Survivors with an active trap in endgame will die if they cross the halfway point of the exit gate. However, they can escape through the hatch with an active trap, or they can technically be carried by the Pig across the halfway point if she chooses to let them go. If the trap is empowered, the survivor can run out the exit gate without any issue. If the survivor doesn't remove the head trap in the 150-second time limit, the trap will trigger, killing the survivor. The Clown. The Clown uses his power of the Afterpiece Tonic and Antidote to increase his movement speed, slow survivors, and hack and cough all over the map. He begins the trial with 6 bottles in his inventory and can switch between both Tonic and Antidote, throwing the bottles to create an area of effect. The Afterpiece Tonic, or the purple bottles, don't impact the Clown, but will hinder survivors' movement speed, blur their vision, deny them fast faults, and increase their audible coughing while they remain in contact with the purple cloud and shortly after leaving it. The Antidote, or piss bottles, will create yellow clouds with the same area of effect, which will boost anyone's movement speed if they come in contact with it. With the Clown's recent buff to his yellow bottles, you'll mostly see these used since the speed is hard to outplay at most loops. The Spirit. The Spirit uses her power of Yamaoka's Haunting to snap, crackle, pop all over the map.
My bones!
The Spirit charges her Haunting to begin a phase walk. During phase, she moves at 7 meters per second through an ethereal plane, leaving her body behind as a husk. While phasing, survivors are invisible to her just as she is to them. However, she retains the ability to see scratch marks and any disturbances to the environment such as moving grass. She can also hear footsteps, breathing, and grunts of pain from survivors to help determine their exact placement. Once her power has ended, she retains her speed for an additional second to perform an attack before reverting back to a 110 killer. On the survivor end, when the Spirit is phasing, she emits a directional cue all survivors can hear when they're within 24 meters of her phased form. Outside of phasing, the Spirit has a passive phasing ability where she will phase in and out of view for survivors, making it hard to determine her placement and her direction. The Legion. Frank, Susie, Julie, and Joey form the Legion, who rush around deep wounding survivors and applying injury pressure to the entire team. With the power of friendship! If we're being technical, it's called Feral Frenzy. While in Frenzy, the Legion's movement speed is increased, and they have to land a successful hit on a survivor for the Frenzy to continue. Each hit on a survivor adds speed, and unlike other killers, the Legion can vault pallets and fast vault windows from any direction to help get that hit in power. After the first successful hit, survivors are revealed with killer instincts so long as they're within the Legion's terror radius. The only time they aren't revealed is if the Legion is undetectable, the survivor is oblivious, or the survivor is already in deep wound. While it's difficult to pull off with a well-coordinated team, getting a 5th consecutive hit will down the survivor and end the frenzy. Other than this 5th hit down, Legion's power only injures survivors and cannot down them. Feral Frenzy will end if any of the following occurs. The Legion whiffs on a survivor, the chain timer ends before the next hit is landed, the Legion hits a survivor who's already in deep wound, or the Legion performs a grab action on a survivor vaulting or in a locker. When Feral Frenzy ends, there's a brief fatigue which will slow the Legion down and darken the screen before the power will begin to recharge. The Plague. Vommy Mommy uses the power of Vile Purge to infect survivors and unlock her true power, Corrupt Purge. Let's talk about her regular puke,
Brother,
Vile Purge. At the start of the match, the plague can vomit on items such as gens to passively infect survivors when they interact with them. This item will remain infected for 40 seconds and is a good way to slow down gens while also patrolling at the beginning of the game. In Chase, the plague can puke directly on a survivor to both start and increase their infection rate, as well as infect windows and pallets which will start or continue their infection when the survivor interacts with them. As for survivor infection, there are 2 stages. Stage 1 sickness is where the survivor has been infected and their infection meter will continue to go up. Being puked on, running, or interacting with an already infected item will increase their infection meter until they reach stage 2 and become both broken and a form of infection themselves. In stage 2, they cannot be healed unless they cleanse at a pool of devotion, which will take them from the broken status all the way back to full health. If they choose to deny Plague her power and continue playing at stage 2 infection, any survivor or item they interact with will become infected, such as vaulting a window, dropping a pallet, repairing a gen, or unhooking a teammate. Pools of devotion give the plague her true power, Corrupt Purge. Once claimed at a pool of devotion, the plague's puke no longer infects survivors, and instead hitting them will take away a health state. Corrupt Purge lasts for 60 seconds before the plague is taken out of power and has to claim it again at another pool. Survivors can end Corrupt Purge early if they manage to pallet stun the plague while she's in power. Lastly, if survivors manage to cleanse at every pool on the map, the plague will be remotely put into power and all the pools will be reset. The Ghost Face. Danny Johnson uses his power of Night Shroud to mark survivors for instant downs. While in Night Shroud, the Ghostface becomes undetectable and can begin stalking survivors. The Ghostface also has the ability to crouch, increasing his stealth but lowering his movement speed to less than a survivor. He can stalk survivors within 40 meters and needs 5 seconds of stalk time to mark them for an instant down. Lean stalking around a corner stalks twice as quickly as regular stalking. Once a survivor is fully stalked, they become marked and for the next 60 seconds cannot reveal Ghostface and are exposed. A survivor can reveal Ghostface if they can see at least 1/3 of his model on the central part of their screen for a second and a half when within 32 meters of him. Knocking Ghostface out of power will reset his power bar and trigger Killer Instinct on the survivor for 4 seconds. The only way for a survivor to have their stock meter reset is to either become fully marked and outrun the timer or to receive an M1 hit. Ghostface loses collision while stalking, which makes it possible to move past a body blocking survivor to get to a marked one. The Demogorgon, or Demo Puppers as I call him, is a dash killer with great map control through the Upside Down and his power of the Abyss. His dash power can be charged to lunge forward at just over 18 meters per second to land a shred attack on a survivor or to destroy breakable walls and downed pallets. In addition to this shred, whenever Demo is holding his power, any survivor within range of an active portal will be shown by Killer Instinct. Speaking of portals, Demo begins the match with 6 of these he can place wherever he chooses, granting him the ability to traverse the map via the Upside Down. A portal starts out as inactive, but becomes active once Demo uses it for travel. Inactive portals cannot be seen or sealed by survivors. After emerging from a portal, Demo is undetectable for the next 5 seconds. However, there is a map-wide audio cue that he's traversing the Upside Down. Survivors in the area of effect of an active portal remain oblivious until the portal is sealed or they leave the area. If survivors seal an active portal, that token will be returned to Demo's inventory. If not, they cannot be reused or recycled, so place them wisely. The Oni. The Oni uses the power of Yamaoka's Wrath to be almost as angry as DbD's player base right now. He starts the trial out of power and has to injure survivors to charge Yamaoka's Wrath. Injuring a healthy survivor adds 40% to his power on strike, and any injured survivor begins dropping blood orbs until they're back to full health. The Oni can see the aura of these orbs, and absorbing them will further charge his power. Putting a survivor from injured to the dying state grants 0 charge to Yamaoka's Wrath, so most Onis will leave the first injured survivor to leave power around the map. Once fully charged, he can enter Blood Fury, which unlocks both Demon Dash and Demon Strike. While in Demon Dash, the Oni sprints around the map at the cost of driving like a boat. Once a survivor is spotted, the Oni can instant down with his Cannibal. Successfully hitting a survivor will lead to 3 ground hits with his Cannibal, meaning the opportunity for multiple downs, while a missed attack will result in only 1 strike. Picking or yoinking a survivor will take Oni out of power, but he will retain any charges that were left to his power once the animation begins. Lastly, hooking a survivor also releases blood orbs to help encourage Onis not to slug. The Deathslinger. The Slinger of Death uses his power of the Redeemer to harpoon survivors and reel them in for deep wound hits. He has a pretty simple power, but there are some things to know. The Redeemer has a range of 18 meters and takes just over 2.5 seconds to reload, so missing shots is punishing to say the least. Once a survivor is successfully speared, the Slinger can begin to reel them in. Walking backwards increases the reeling speed and negates the struggle effects from the survivor in an attempt to break the chain and use the environment to dodge the follow-through hit. Once the survivor is close enough, a follow-up attack can be landed to place them in deep wound. The follow-up attack is not required to injure the survivor, only to get the down. If you can't land the follow-up attack on a healthy survivor, let the chain break and don't swing, otherwise the survivor won't lose a health state. To successfully down a survivor with the Redeemer, the follow-up attack has to land, meaning shots through windows are fine since those will hit, but shots over safe pallets will not. The Executioner. Pyramid Head is DbD's sexiest killer, capable of tormenting survivors, denying their hook perks, and comes equipped with a mini Mori, all from his power, Rites of Judgment. The first part of Daddy Dorito's kit is his torment trails. Pyramid Head puts down these trails by plunging his greatsword into the ground and laying down more lasagna than a Midwest potluck. These trails have a time limit of just over a minute, unless they're placed too close to an objective such as a hooked survivor, gen, or exit gate, in which case they'll disappear after a few seconds. Any survivor that walks or runs over these trails will become tormented, activating more of his kit, and will be revealed to Pyramid Head with Killer Instinct. Tormented survivors leave behind a trail of barbed wire even at full health, making it easier to track them. The only way for a survivor to remove their torment is to either become caged or to uncage another survivor. Any downed survivor on Death Hook that is still tormented can be mini-moried by Pyramid Head. While the Greatsword is in the ground, Pyramid Head can activate Punishment of the Damned by sending out a ranged attack which can pass through any wall or obstacle in a straight line. Any survivor hit with Punishment will lose a health state, and with the long trail, hitting more than one survivor is entirely doable. This ranged attack can travel downstairs but not up, and can't go over gaps such as the basement stairs. Once a tormented survivor is put in the dying state, Pyramid Head can opt to send them to a Cage of Atonement, or Horny Jail, which will distance spawn from the killer. He won't be able to see the cage's aura, and if he comes across the caged survivor and stands within 10 meters of the cage for a few seconds, the cage will be relocated. Cages deny all hook-related perks for both the killer and survivor, so most often a caging Pyramid Head is a rare find. The Blight. Talbot Grimes is DbD's favorite junkie, capable of pinballing around the map at max speed, taking health states with his power, Blighted Corruption. Blight begins the trial with 5 tokens, and each rush consumes one. While rushing, Blight moves at 9.2 meters per second with reduced maneuverability and is incapable of attacking until he's completed his first bump within 3 seconds. After the first bump, Blight can redirect his rush towards survivors to attack or to breakable walls or dropped pallets to destroy them. Blight's rush ends if any of the following occur. He lands an attack on a survivor, he uses power to destroy a breakable wall or drop pallet, his rush ends before bumping with an obstacle, or all of his tokens are consumed. After rushing, Blight enters a short fatigue where he'll look to the ground with a darkened screen and inject himself with more Blight. After the fatigue, Blight's power will begin to recharge. Blight can only initiate his rushes once all of his tokens are fully recharged. We are officially halfway through the list, and if you've made it this far, let me know if you've learned anything new down in the comments. If not, then I don't know, maybe you should have made this video. The Twins. Charlotte and Victor are DbD's most notorious sluggers with their power of Blood Bond. Charlotte, other than being absolutely breathtaking, doesn't really do much. She has an M1 attack and is the only one who can hook survivors, so cleaning up after Victor is her main purpose. Victor, on the other hand, is Charlotte's power, and unbinding this chest goblin will transfer control from Charlotte to Victor. There's a map-wide audio prompt for this unbind, which means survivors will always know when control is transferred between the twins and when it's time to DC.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Here are some important notes about Victor. He can't see scratch marks, but he can run at 150 speed following trails of blood, which will appear brighter to him. Survivors within 18 meters of idle Victor give off Killer Instinct to Charlotte unless they're crouched. Several things can happen when Victor comes across a survivor depending on their status. If the survivor is healthy, Victor can perform a pounce attack and latch onto the survivor's back. If the attack succeeds, control will automatically transfer back to Charlotte, who will see Victor's aura and Killer Instinct and can follow up on foot to down the survivor. So long as Victor is on their back, the survivor will suffer from the broken, incapacitated, and oblivious status effects. The survivor can begin removing Victor, which takes 8 seconds in total and ends with a short crushing animation. If Charlotte attacks the survivor while Victor is still clinging to them, he'll return inside her, and the survivor will be put in the dying state. If Victor pounces on a survivor who is already injured, instead of latching onto the survivor, it will put them in the dying state. He can then either slug and find another survivor to latch onto, or control can be switched back to Charlotte, who has to walk all the way over to aisle 5 to clean up the mess. If Victor comes comes across a survivor hiding in a locker, he can pounce on the handles and keep the locker closed and the survivor trapped for 10 seconds. After this time, if Charlotte hasn't removed the survivor, they can jump out, crushing Victor in the process. Victor gives off a red glow, signaling to survivors whenever he's crushable. The main ways for survivors to crush him are from any of the following. He misses his attack, he hits his attack on an injured survivor, downing them, and another survivor is nearby to kick him, a pallet is dropped on his head, or if he's left in the idle state and control is with Charlotte. Victor can be manually recalled by Charlotte whenever she likes, or he'll be recalled automatically if left unbound for 90 seconds. Which, good luck with that, because there's not a whole lot more satisfying in this game than kicking that little shithead. Lastly, idle Charlotte retains her collision for 30 seconds following an unbind, after which survivors can run through her. The Trickster. The Trickster is DbD's death by 1,000 cuts with his power, Showstopper. The Trickster begins the trial with 44 blades in his inventory and deals laceration on survivors by hitting them with these knives. Each successful hit grants 1 stack of laceration and 8 stacks will take a health state away from the survivor. If a survivor avoids being struck by a blade for 15 seconds, their laceration stacks will begin to decay at 2 seconds per stack. Also, if the Trickster hits a lacerated survivor with an M1 attack, it will remove 3 of these stacks from the total. Main event is Trickster's secondary power, and it charges at the same rate as laceration. Once he has 8 charges, he can activate it to throw an unlimited number of blades for a minimum of 6 seconds. Main event increases the throw rate by 66%, and each obtained combo rank adds half a second to the main event duration. Once main event is ended, the Trickster will enter a short fatigue. Once the Trickster is running low on his blade supply, he'll be shown the aura of blades at nearby lockers. Just like Huntress, he can reload at lockers whenever he wants, regardless of his supply. The Nemesis. The Nemesis uses his power of the T-Virus to infect survivors, increase his range attack, and has free information built into his kit from his zombies. Here's how his mutation tiers work. The Nemesis begins the trial in Mutation 1 and can tier up his mutation the more he uses his power. In Mutation 1, his Tentacle Strike can't break walls or downed pallets, has a max range of 5 meters, and reduces his movement speed while he's holding. To tier up, he has to gain 5 contamination points. In Mutation 2, his Tentacle Strike can now destroy breakable walls and dropped pallets, and his holding speed is increased. Once he gains another 9 contamination points, he enters the final phase. Mutation 3, same perks as before, but with his new tentacle range of 6.5 meters. Survivors will hear an audible chime whenever the Nemesis tiers up, and can also identify the level of Nemesis mutation by looking at his arm. Here's how Nemi earns contamination points. He earns 3 points for hitting an uncontaminated survivor, which will infect them and give them a 20% hindered effect for 2 seconds. This initial infection won't injure the survivor, but will leave them vulnerable to future tentacle strikes or attacks from his zombies. He gets 1 point for hitting a survivor who is already infected, which will then take a health state from that survivor. He can also get 1 point for tentacle whipping a zombie, which will crush them, but they will respawn from beneath a random hook after 12 seconds if they're killed this way. Any survivor who is infected will begin to cough regardless of their health state, which can be useful for Nemi's tracking, but will also get the attention of Nemi's passive power, the zombies. Here's how his zombies work. Shortly after the beginning of the trial, 2 zombies will bloom from the ground and begin patrolling the map. I call them Karen and Kevin. Nemi can see the aura of his zombies at all times, which is especially useful since they're drawn to loud noise notifications, generator repairs, chest unlocks, and cries from contaminated or injured survivors. A zombie walking means that they are currently in patrol. A zombie with raised arms will give directional info on a nearby survivor. A zombie stunned and looking upwards means that they were recently blinded by a survivor. Even though they're slow, the zombies can attack survivors who get too close and follow the same contamination logic as Nemi's tentacle. Survivors can blind zombies for a short time with flashlights, flashbangs, and firecrackers, or pallet stun them to death at the cost of that resource. The respawn time for a crushed zombie is increased to 45 seconds, and they'll once again spawn from beneath a random hook. A survivor can remove their contamination by interacting with the Nemesis crate for a single-use vaccine. Each trial spawns 4 of these vaccines, which they can use to cure themselves or another teammate. Once cured of infection, Nemi will be notified via Killer Instinct for 3 seconds, regardless of where he is on the map. The Cenobite. Pinhead is currently the only killer no longer available in the store and comes with his power of Summons of Pain to chain survivors and always come for them.
I came.
First, let's talk about how his chains work. Pinhead activates his power by summoning a gateway within 16 meters of his position. His FOV takes over the gateway, and he manually summons a possessed chain he has to land on a survivor in order to bind them. Successfully hitting a survivor will spawn 3 chains to trap them and reduce their movement speed all the way down to 25%, depending on how many chains are attached to them. A chained survivor cannot run or fast vault, but their speed will slightly increase as they remove each chain. Additionally, survivors who are chained in the exit gate will be blocked from exiting until shortly after breaking the final chain. Survivors can break Pinhead's chains in multiple ways. While chained, a survivor can perform the break free interaction to remove the chains one at a time, which each takes 1 second. They can use the environment to break them, however another chain will always spawn and attempt to bind the survivor again. Lastly, another survivor can run across a bound survivor's chains to break them, which won't spawn another chain. Pinhead's passive power lies in the Lament configuration, which spawns in a random location at the start of the trial and will charge a chain hunt over the course of 90 seconds. Survivors are the only ones who can see the aura of the box. Outside of a chain hunt, the aura appears in white, but during one, it will be changed to yellow. A survivor can pick up the box to prevent the chain hunt from beginning, but will suffer from the oblivious status effect and will be unable to drop the box without attempting to solve it. If they carry the box for too long, a chain hunt will begin targeting only them. It takes 6 seconds for a survivor to solve the box and will give Pinhead Killer Instinct to their location along with the option to teleport. A few things can happen here depending on what Pinhead decides to do. If the survivor is within attacking range on foot, Pinhead can interrupt the solve by attacking the survivor. If Pinhead successfully downs the survivor, he'll solve the box himself and begin the chain hunt. If he chooses to teleport to the survivor, the box is dropped and respawns after 30 seconds. Pinhead always spawns facing the survivor from 10 to 12 meters away. Pinhead can also choose to ignore a survivor when they're solving the box, after which the box will respawn after 45 seconds. While in a chain hunt, survivors are repeatedly targeted by chains that spawn from nearby gateways, which will attempt to bind them until all 3 chains are attached. This process will continue until a survivor picks up the box. If Pinhead finds the box while patrolling the map, he'll instantly solve it. As a result, all survivors will scream and reveal their location for 3 seconds and become bound by 3 chains, after which the Lament configuration will respawn after 10 seconds. When only 1 survivor is left in the trial, a chain hunt will still begin, but no spectral chains will spawn. The Artist. Carmina Mora uses her power of Birds of Torment to be, in my opinion, one of the coolest killer designs in the game.
I know a bit of their language.
There are 2 variants to her crows and how they affect survivors. The first are her dire crows. She begins the trial with 3 of these dire crows, the tokens of which you can see on her hand, and places them along individual flight paths which extend up to 7.5 meters in front of where she placed them. They remain dormant for up to 10 seconds after her last placement until dissipating. If the artist sends her crows and a survivor is on the flight path, they'll instantly lose a health state but will not become swarmed. Flight paths follow verticality, which means she can place her paths both up and downstairs. Dire crows become swarms when any of the following occurs. They collide with an obstacle, they fly past the end of their flight path, or a survivor runs into an idle crow known as eating the bird. Swarms travel across the map, ignoring all verticality and obstacles along the way. Survivors can see the aura of these swarms as they travel. Even cross-map, a swarm can collide with a survivor, resulting in a murder of crows if they're not already swarmed, or the loss of a health state if they are. If the swarm narrowly avoids a survivor, the artist will see them with Killer Instinct even if they're hiding in a locker. A swarm survivor can begin repelling the crows, which takes 8 seconds in total. The artist can see the aura of these swarms at all times unless a survivor begins repelling them, which will hide the aura after 2.5 seconds. Additionally, survivors can remove crows by entering a locker. If a repelling survivor runs into an idle dire crow, the repel timer resets. The Onryo. The Onryo is Blockbuster's most dedicated employee, using her power of Deluge of Fear to condemn and mori survivors who were not kind and did not rewind.
The TV's leaking!
She has 2 states of being she can switch between whenever she likes. There's Demanifested, which is how she begins the trial, where she is undetectable. While in this state, she can't be stunned by pallets, she can't attack survivors, but she can interact with kicking and breaking prompts. In order to start chasing and injuring survivors, the Onryo has to manifest, which takes a few seconds. The Onryo's passive power is condemning survivors, which is directly related to her TVs and her projection. Each trial has 7 of these TVs scattered throughout the map, which will turn on 30 seconds into the match. The Onryo can use her ability of projection to travel to any power TV while she's demanifested. While projecting, any survivor that's within 16 meters of any power TV will receive a stack of Condemned. Survivors receive Condemned stacks by interacting with the power of the Onryo, and like the films, once they receive 7 stacks, the Onryo will be alerted with Killer Instinct for 6 seconds and can mori them regardless of their hook states. Hooking a survivor will lock in up to 3 stacks of their Condemned, which they cannot remove for the remainder of the trial. The same applies to their second hook, which puts the cap at 6 permanent Condemned stacks. Survivors have to interact with the TVs in order to manage their Condemned stacks. If a survivor interacts with a powered TV, they'll receive a VHS tape and the TV will power down for 70 seconds. Another TV will be shown with a loud noise notification and a yellow aura for the survivor to deliver that tape to. While carrying a tape, a survivor can power down other TVs they come across and receive 1 stack of Condemned for each TV. Delivering their tape will remove 3 stacks of Condemned, so long as they aren't locked in stacks from being hooked. Lastly, a survivor cannot drop a held tape without delivering it to their predetermined yellow TV, and while holding a tape, they can't use any equipped item.
That's all?
The Dredge. The Dredge is DbD's version of the Boogeyman, with the ability to mind game survivors with its remnant, teleport to lockers, and inflict the wailing souls of an entire village during nightfall. The Dredge has 3 tokens of the Gloaming, where it leaves a stationary remnant and activates the power of teleportation. While in power, the Dredge can see the aura of all lockers on the map and can choose one to teleport to. Once it arrives, it can choose to exit the locker or select another locker to teleport to, each consuming 1 token. Additionally, the Dredge can utilize its actual ability of returning to the remnant instead of traveling to lockers, which is especially useful in chase. When returning to the remnant, the Dredge is always facing the direction it placed the remnant in. The remnant is removed after the Dredge's first teleport or if a survivor collides with it. After using power, the Gloaming has a cooldown of 10 seconds during the day and 4 seconds during nightfall. Outside of traveling to lockers, the Dredge can also camp them by entering manually or by simply remaining in them. The Dredge is undetectable in a locker for the first 8 seconds, after which there's a warning sound and black fog will begin to pour out of the locker, warning nearby survivors. If the Dredge teleports to a locker a survivor is in the process of locking or is currently hiding in, the Dredge will trap them and emerge carrying that survivor. At the start of the trial, all lockers will be unlocked and can be locked manually by survivors. Neighboring lockers can be locked individually, but if the Dredge teleports to a set of lockers, it will always end up in the locked locker and will have to play a break animation before exiting. The locks can be broken when the Dredge breaks out of a locker or if he breaks the lock with his basic attack. Nightfall charges passively throughout the trial, but progress can be advanced whenever the Dredge teleports, injures survivors, hooks survivors, camps lockers, and for each injured survivor in the trial. Trying to keep track of the charges is a lost cause, but the total amount of charges can be seen visually on the HUD character portraits. Once Nightfall is fully charged, it begins and lasts for 60 seconds, boosting the Dredge and inflicting the survivors. They're left in near total darkness while the Dredge's vision is clear, and it gains all of the following benefits. It's undetectable, its teleportation speed is boosted to 38 meters per second, its Gloaming cooldown is reduced to 4 seconds, and survivors trigger Killer Instinct when within 60 meters of lockers he's teleported to or when he travels back to the Remnant. The Mastermind. Albert Wesker is Ari's favorite cat-eyed man with the power of Ouroboros, releasing virulent bound into the atmosphere.
Complete global saturation.
Wesker, or the Mastermind, which no one actually calls him, begins the trial with 2 tokens for his bound attack. He charges his power to bound 7 meters in the direction he's facing for the first token and 14 meters for the second. Now, here's where Wesker's power can get a bit complicated depending on the status of the survivor, but also how the power plays out. If the survivor is not performing an interaction, Wesker will grab them by the throat and his bound attack will continue. If the bound runs into an obstacle, Wesker will crush the survivor against the obstacle to take a health state. Injured survivors will then be released from Wesker's grasp while he suffers from a short fatigue. However, survivors put in the dying state will instead be put on Wesker's shoulder so he can take them to a hook. If the bound ends without running into an obstacle, Wesker will then throw the survivor, who must collide with an obstacle to have a health state removed. If the throw sends the survivor into the map and they don't collide with anything, they'll land on the ground on their back and end up back on their feet without having lost the health state. If the survivor is performing an interaction such as vaulting or unhooking, or has the endurance effect, Wesker will perform a swipe with his Ouroboros arm, taking a health state. An uninfected survivor becomes infected with Ouroboros whenever Wesker lands a bound attack. If Wesker bounds into a dropped pallet or window, he will complete the bound with a vault. Wesker's infection worsens over time. Each bound attack adds 20 out of the 100 charges to becoming critically infected, along with 0.8 charges being added every second until the survivor is hooked, which will then reset the infection meter back to 1 charge. Once infection reaches its full 100 charges, the survivor becomes critically infected, resulting in a 4% hindered and the ability to be instantly downed by Wesker's bound attack. Survivors can cure their infection and the infection of other survivors by using Wesker's cans of hairspray found in 6 chests throughout the map. Each can clears 2 separate infections and will give Wesker Killer Instinct for 4 seconds regardless of where he is on the map.
What? Premature.
The Knight. The Knight is an anti-loop killer able to patrol and chase survivors with the power of his Guardia Compagnia, which is Latin for the guy with the guards everyone DCs against. Mind you, these 4 DCs were from the only 2 games I played. The Knight has 3 guards at his disposal he can toggle between to summon along patrol paths. In the guard summon mode, the Knight's FOV is transferred to the path and moves at almost 14 meters per second, steering the path up to 32 meters. In this mode, the Knight can't see survivors, their scratch marks, or pools of blood, but he can still hear them and see the interactions they make to the environment. The Knight can summon a new guard whenever he chooses so long as that guard isn't on cooldown, but can have only 1 guard active at a time. A path must be a minimum of 10 meters to be placed, and once complete, the guard will spawn at the far end of the path and repeatedly walk along it and back until the power drains or a survivor is detected, which will initiate a hunt. As for the 3 guards, they each have their purpose and their specialty. There's the Carnifex, who excels in breaking and damaging commands with a short cooldown. There's the Assassin, who's the Knight's Chaser, who moves quickly during a hunt and deep wounds survivors. And there's the Jailer, who is great for performing patrols with a large detection radius, longer hunt, and patrol duration. Outside of placing for patrol, the Knight can also issue a guard order within 6 meters to break walls, drop pallets, and kick gens to regress them by 5%. A survivor can trigger a guard hunt when they're within the detection range shown in a green circle by either entering the line of sight of the guard or triggering a loud noise notification. When the guard detects them, they will phase through the environment and across elevation to reach their exact detected location in 2.5 seconds, after which the hunt begins. The guard drops a standard at the detected location, which will materialize over time. Any survivor who comes in contact with the guard's attack range, whether or not they're the survivor being chased, will take damage. Hunted survivors can escape a hunt without taking damage by doing the following. The first way is to grab the standard once it's materialized, signaled by the horn blow. I call it capturing the flag. If they capture the flag, they receive a 50% haste effect and endurance for 3 seconds. The second way is by unhooking another survivor while being hunted. And last but not least, they can outlast the duration of the hunt, which is indicated on their HUD portrait. If the Knight comes within 8 meters of his guard while they're hunting, the depletion rate of the hunt will triple. Also, if he M1s the survivor, the guard will despawn. If a guard successfully downs a survivor, they trigger Killer Instinct for 3 seconds regardless of where Knight is on the map. The Skull Merchant. Chris 3gener uses her power of Eyes in the Sky to remain one of DbD's most hated killers, even in her weakest state. She's currently over in the PTB workshop getting some much needed tuning, so all the numbers and some specifics are going to be avoided while this makeover is underway. In short, she begins the trial with 6 drones in her inventory. After deploying a drone, it begins scanning an area of effect. Any survivor detected by an active drone will be scanned and receive 1 lock-on stack. Survivors can avoid these scans by crouching, standing still, or ducking behind an obstacle. Once a survivor has 3 lock-on stacks, they'll become injured if at full health, deep wounded if injured, gain the broken status effect, and receive a claw trap on their arm.
Dang, anything else?
The claw trap has a battery life which must run out before they're taken out of the broken state and the claw trap is removed. Whenever a survivor with a claw trap is scanned by a drone, they become hindered for a short time and the Skull Merchant is notified of their position with Killer Instinct. Recently scanned and claw-trapped survivors will show up on her radar, which she can check whenever she likes. A square on the radar means that the survivor is on the same elevation as her, while a triangle will show if they are above or below her current position. From this view, she can also redirect the scan lines of her drones or recall them back to her inventory. Survivors can approach a drone and hack it through a minigame to disable it for a period of time. However, if they fail to hack or are interrupted, they'll receive a lock-on stack. The Singularity. Singularity loves nothing more than harming the crew with his quantum instantiation. The Singularity, or just Larry, begins the trial with 8 biopods he can shoot and attach to most vertical surfaces within 22 meters. He can see the aura of these pods at all times, and while walking he can remove previously placed pods by shooting them again. To use the pods, Larry enters the system where his POV changes to the pod. From this view, he can target and switch to other placed pods. While in the biopod system, Larry can inflict survivors with temporal slipstream, which I'm just going to refer to as meatball. To meatball a survivor, they must be within the pod's line of sight and within 20 meters. Survivors who meet this criteria have their aura outlined in white, and aiming the reticle on them will inflict them with the power of the meatball. Survivors can share their meatball with other survivors when they're within 6 meters for over 2 seconds. Any survivor who becomes meatballed triggers Killer Instinct for 3 seconds. While a survivor is meatballed, Larry can perform a slipstream teleport by aiming the reticle of the controlled biopod at them or by shooting them with a biopod. If Larry teleports through a drop pallet, it will break it instantly and slow Larry for a moment before he returns to regular speed. Whenever Larry uses his slipstream teleport, he is automatically put into overclock mode, where he gains a 3% haste, can't be stunned by pallets, and if a survivor attempts to do so, it will instantly break the pallet and only stun Larry for a moment. Lastly, while in overclock, he gains a 75% boost to his braking and vaulting speeds. Survivors can limit Larry's power by collecting EMPs from any of the 4 supply cases across the map. They can see the aura of these cases within 28 meters in white while it's in the process of printing an EMP, and in yellow once the case is ready. Activating the EMP will charge to an area of effect of 10 meters, which will remove the meatballs from the survivors and disable all biopods in range for 45 seconds. The Xenomorph. The Xenomorph is the most perfect specimen, using its power of hidden pursuit and the cranium you could land an airplane on. Its ranged attack is a tail strike with insane speeds and a reach of 5 meters. It has next to no wind-up to warn survivors and can reach over every vault location. Its map control lies in the 7 control stations that spawn on the map and the tunnels that they connect to. Xeno can see these control stations at all times, and survivors will see their aura when within 12 meters. To help with navigation in the tunnels, Xeno can highlight a control station in yellow, and after entering, will be guided via a yellow path showing the quickest route to that control station. Inside the tunnels, the Xeno is undetectable with a movement speed of 18 meters per second, and the charge speed of crawler mode is increased by 8 times. Glowing footsteps appear on the ceiling within 16 meters if a survivor is walking or running above. Xeno can exit the tunnels when beneath another control station, and any survivor within 12 meters of the station will be revealed with Killer Instinct for 3 seconds. The Xenomorph has 2 modes, walking mode and crawler mode. It begins the trial in walking mode and passively charges crawler over the course of 35 seconds, which will automatically switch to once it's charged. While in crawler mode, the Xeno's terror radius is reduced down to 24 meters and it can perform its ranged tail attack. The Xeno will only exit crawler mode when it picks or yoinks a survivor, or if it receives too much damage from a remote flame turret. Speaking of turrets, survivors can collect these from control stations and can have up to 4 active at a time. A survivor carrying a turret is slowed by 35%, exhausted, and incapacitated. However, they cannot be detected by Xeno in the tunnels. After a turret is removed from a control station, that station will charge another over the course of 35 seconds. Once deployed, all survivors can see the aura of the turret in range and will hear a beeping which will speed up when the Xeno is nearby. The turret has a range of 10 meters, and once the Xeno is within its line of sight, the turret will open fire and begin filling the Xeno's burn gauge. If the gauge is filled completely, the Xeno will be forced out of crawler mode. The Xeno can also use its tail or basic attack to destroy active turrets. After 60 seconds, the turret token will become available again from a control station. Whenever the Xeno exits the tunnels, all deployed turrets are deactivated for 2.5 seconds. Fun fact, the guy voicing this video named his Shiba Inu Ripley from the heroine of this iconic horror franchise. The good guy. Charles Lee Ray is DbD's shortest killer, hunting survivors with his power of verbal abuse.
Take this, dipshit!
If we're being technical, it's called Playtime's Over. His special ability is activated through Hidey Ho mode, which grants Chucky the undetectable status effect and unlocks his slice and dice attack. To attack, Chucky completes a brief charge up, then rushes at an additional 50% speed with a longer lunge duration. If Chucky runs into a pallet or window while slicing and dicing, he'll perform a short scamper and then immediately resume his attack. While in Hidey Ho mode, survivors see and hear illusionary footfalls around their position to help hide Chucky's exact whereabouts. However, they will still hear his chuckling when he's nearby. Once ended, Hidey Ho mode goes on cooldown for a short 10 seconds. Due to Chucky's height, survivors will see the aura of Chucky's little feet on the obstacles they'd traditionally be able to see other killers to help determine his placement. The Unknown. The Unknown is DbD's most crackly killer, I stand corrected spirit, and uses his power of UVX to weaken survivors and haunt the map with his hallucinations. The Unknown's ranged attack is a UVX projectile which he spits out of his neck and can bounce off of walls and corners to create a blast area of just over 2 meters. If survivors come into contact with the projectile, they are hindered by 6% for 3 seconds, and if they come into contact with the blast area, they are inflicted with weakened. No, weakened, not weakened. Any survivor who is weakened is at risk of taking damage from the UVX projectile, which has a cooldown of 7 seconds. The only way a survivor can remove their weakened state is by looking directly at the Unknown when within 25 meters and for a total of 10 seconds. Survivors who are in the process of staring down the Unknown will be highlighted in a pink aura. Outside of this projectile, the Unknown also has map control built into his kit through his hallucinations. The Unknown will drop these hallucinations once they're charged over the course of 45 seconds. He can have up to 4 of these hallucinations active at a time, and dropping a 5th will remove the oldest hallucination automatically. Hallucinations will despawn if a survivor is hooked close to an existing one or if they're too close to other hallucinations or key objectives. The Unknown can see the aura of his hallucinations at all times, and survivors can see them when they're within 8 meters. When a survivor becomes weakened, the charge time for the next hallucination is reduced by 10 seconds. Survivors can remove hallucinations by performing the Dispel interaction, which takes 4 seconds in total unless they are currently weakened, which will increase the time to an entire 5 seconds instead. Completing the Dispel will remove the hallucination. However, failing the Dispel causes the survivor to become weakened and will trigger Killer Instinct for 5 seconds. Now that you understand hallucinations, their entire purpose is for the Unknown to use for teleportation. After teleporting, a decoy is left behind for 5 seconds. Teleportation then goes on cooldown for a short 25 seconds. While the Unknown's teleport is on cooldown, all placed hallucinations will go from standing to crumpled on the ground. The Lich. Vecna's power of Vile Darkness lies in his spellbook, his love for geometry, and of course, that snatched waistline. He has 4 spells, each with varying effects with separate cooldowns he can activate whenever the situation calls for. His mobility spell is Fly, which lasts for 4 seconds and ignores all vault locations. His ranged spell is Fly to the Damned, which sends out 5 projectiles that can pass through obstacles and will injure or down any survivor that gets caught in their path. If a survivor is downed by this projectile, they're shown by Killer Instinct for 5 seconds. Survivors can dodge these projectiles by crouching if they were on the same level as Vecna when he cast them. His information spell is the Dispelling Sphere, which creates an invisible orb that reveals survivors with Killer Instinct as well as deactivates any magical item in their possession for 60 seconds, which is reflected on the HUD. His chase spell is Mage Hand, which will block upright pallets from being dropped for 4 seconds or will lift previously dropped pallets back to the upright position in half a second. Survivors can interact with the 6 treasure chests on the map, which will perform a quick D20 roll with various results, but mostly will yield magic or regular items for the survivor. Each survivor can have a boot and gauntlet equipped, but if they come across another item of the same class, it can be swapped out or left behind. Each item has a benefit centered around Vecna's spells, such as giving haste when he's using Mage Hand, seeing the aura of the Dispelling Sphere, and seeing Vecna while he's in Fly. If the roll is a 1, the chest will become a mimic, and the survivor must land a set of difficult skill checks to be released without losing a health state. If the roll is a nat 20, the survivor will receive either the hand or eye of Vecna. They have to attach this dismembered body part, and each grants a unique power, but the survivor can only use them via lockers at full health, which will then take them down to injured and broken. With the hand of Vecna, if a survivor fast vaults into a locker, they will be teleported to an entirely different locker that is at least 10 meters away. This triggers a loud noise notification on the target locker and Killer Instinct on them for 5 seconds. With the Eye of Vecna, if a survivor performs a fast exit from a locker, for the next 12 seconds they are completely invisible and silent with a 25% haste, after which they will be revealed by Killer Instinct for 3 seconds. Any survivor on Death Hook with the hand or Eye of Vecna can be mini-moried by Vecna. The Dark Lord. Dracula is Castlevania's shapeshifter with a broad kit built for every situation in the trial. He has 3 forms he can switch between as the situation calls for, each with their own special benefits. His default form is Vampire, go figure, and he moves at the standard 115 speed with a ranged attack called Hellfire. This ranged attack has a distance of 8 meters and causes 7 pillars to erupt from his FOV in a straight line. These pillars are limited to Dracula's line of sight, meaning they'll work well over low obstacles and loops but cannot be used through walls. After being used, Hellfire has a cooldown of 7 seconds. His wolf form has several abilities, but it is especially useful for tracking and chasing survivors in a third-person view. In wolf form, scratch marks and pools of blood have increased visibility. A survivor being chased drops scent orbs only the wolf can see the aura of, and each give a temporary haste, increasing his movement speed to 120 and reducing the cooldown on the wolf's pounce attack by 20% for each. Whenever a survivor performs a rushed action, they trigger Killer Instinct for 2 seconds. His ranged attack is a pounce. If he successfully pounces on the survivor, they will lose a health state, and he'll have a howl fatigue. If he misses the first pounce, there's a brief window to redirect for a follow-up pounce. The wolf can also use this pounce to destroy breakable walls and dropped pallets. After use, pounce has a cooldown of 20 seconds. His third and final form is Bat, which removes his ability to injure and down survivors but greatly increases his ability to patrol the map. While in this form, his movement speed is increased to 155. He gains the undetectable status, but survivors can hear the lullaby of his bats within 48 meters. This also gives him the ability to teleport to any vault location such as a window or dropped pallet within 32 meters of his position with a teleport speed of 12 meters per second. In bat form, he can also fly over all vault locations. Survivors are invisible while he's in this form, but they still leave scratch marks and the volume of their footsteps is increased by 50%. The Houndmaster. Portia is DbD's favorite dog mom, with the ability to hunt survivors with her power of scent of blood. Her dog's name is Snug, by the way, and he's the goodest, albeit glitchy boy. Snug's first mode is Chase, where the Houndmaster whistles and creates a chase path in the direction she's facing, which can be curved around obstacles and over vaults. Once commanded, Snug darts out at high speed, following the path to its end. The Houndmaster can then take possession of Snug to redirect an additional chase path from his FOV. Whenever Snug comes across a survivor on either of these paths, he will pounce on them and grab them. The grab survivor's aura is revealed to the Houndmaster, and they will become hindered and incapacitated for up to 8 seconds. During this time, Snug will continuously pull them towards the Houndmaster so she can land an attack. A survivor can escape Snug's grasp in a couple different ways. While a survivor is grabbed, they see the aura of upright pallets within 16 meters. They can drop on Snug to stun him for 3 seconds. Another survivor can interact with Snug to release the grab survivor after a short animation. If the survivor escapes Snug's grasp without becoming injured, they suffer a 10% hindered for 5 seconds. The Houndmaster can switch to search mode and target a specific location, complete and incomplete gens, and exit gates. While the dog is searching, it will have a lullaby of 32 meters and uses its hound sense to locate nearby survivors. The further the dog travels, the larger the radius of hound sense. Any survivor entering this radius will become affected by hound sense and trigger killer instinct. The Houndmaster can follow the search path and move at 5.2 meters per second. This effect remains as long as she stays on or close to the path or until the dog returns to her side. Any survivor impacted by hound sense will be put in deep wound when attacked by the Houndmaster. The Ghoul. Ken Kaneki is one of the most successful DbD licenses, using his power of One-Eyed Terror to Spider-Man his way around the map. The Ghoul's power is the Kagune Leap, which he can perform by aiming a reticle at any vertical surface within 14 meters. Each leap consumes one of his 2 tokens, and there's a 5-second window to perform an additional leap after the first. The leap goes on a short cooldown if Ken uses all of his tokens. The consecutive leap window closes. He uses his power to vault over a dropped pallet or window, or he uses power to grapple onto a survivor. The tokens recharge at 4 seconds each and cannot be used again until fully recharged. If the leap is not on cooldown, breaking a dropped pallet will cause it to enter a cooldown of 1 token. In order to injure survivors, the Ghoul has to use the first leap to get into position and aim the reticle on the survivor to perform a grab attack. You know the survivor will take damage when the aiming reticle shows an open mouth icon. Otherwise, a closed mouth will still grapple the survivor, but not result in a grab attack. During a successful grab attack, there's a QuickTime event which can be landed to perform a perfectly timed attack. Regardless of the QuickTime event, every successful grab attack will put healthy survivors to injured and in deep wound, while an attack on an already injured survivor will not down them and instead will put them in deep wound. A grab attack will also put a Kagune mark on the survivor while the Ghoul enters enraged mode. The mark will remain on that survivor until they are taken out of mend or they enter the dying state. While in enraged mode, the Ghoul benefits from a 3rd leap and the recharge timer on tokens is decreased to 2.5 seconds each. There's a map-wide audio cue to signal that the Ghoul is enraged. If the Ghoul breaks a dropped pallet while enraged, he loses 2 of his power tokens, which will then begin to recharge. The Ghoul remains in enraged mode as long as there is at least 1 survivor with a mark or if the countdown is active. Once the last mark is removed, the countdown will trigger and is indicated on the HUD portraits. The countdown lasts for 40 seconds, after which enraged mode will end and survivors will be notified via a map-wide audio cue. The countdown is increased to 50 seconds if the Ghoul performed a perfectly timed grab attack. The Animatronic. Springtrap is one of DbD's most iconic licensed killers with his power of Fazbear's Fright, which includes a ranged attack, map control, and an undetectable kit. His ranged attack is his fire axe, which has varying effects depending on its target. While the axe is equipped, he moves at 110 speed, but after thrown, his speed is increased to 115 because the axe is just that heavy. If thrown and lodged in a healthy survivor's back, they become injured and broken until the axe is removed while also suffering from the oblivious status effect. When outside of his possession, Springtrap sees his axe with a white aura, meaning a survivor's movement can be easily detected even through walls. To remove the axe, the survivor has to play out an 8-second animation, which will then return it to Springtrap's inventory. Springtrap can grab the axe when it's embedded in the survivor to jump scare them, which plays out a short animation and ends with Springtrap carrying the survivor. If the survivor is already injured and struck by the axe, they'll be put in the dying state. If the axe hits the environment, it creates a 2-meter radius area of effect and reveals survivors with killer instinct for 4 seconds when they come in contact with it. Springtrap can recall his axe after a short cooldown on missed or successful throws. There are 7 security doors in each trial and can be used by Springtrap and the survivors. Springtrap uses the doors to travel the map and is undetectable for 20 seconds after exiting a security door. Survivors can interact with the security door to cycle through the cameras of other doors, and if they see Springtrap for a few seconds, he will be revealed to the team in a white aura for 10 seconds. The security system's battery is shown on the bottom left of the screen, and if it's used too often, the battery will be drained and the security system goes offline for the survivors. Springtrap, however, is not affected by the battery levels. Just like Springtrap, survivors can access the security room to travel through the doors. If Springtrap travels to the door the survivor entered or the door they're traveling to, he'll interrupt them and emerge from the door carrying them. The Krasue. Our final killer is the Krasue. Currently, don't worry, behavior isn't going to let up anytime soon. She uses her power of unbodied flesh to attack survivors in 2 different forms. The Krasue begins the trial in body form with a regular terror radius and movement speed of 115 with the ability of regurgitation, because one puking killer wasn't enough in this game. Regurgitating on a survivor will afflict them with Leeched 1, unlocking more of her kit. This attack can be either a direct hit or can be rebound off walls in the environment to create smaller glands that hone in on nearby survivors. Regurgitate can only inflict the survivor with Leeched 1, after which it will passively fill the longer the survivor stays leeched. Once the survivor reaches Leech 2, they suffer from the broken status effect and will become injured if they were at full health. The Krasue can switch to her secondary head form whenever she likes, and doing so will drop her prison of flesh on the floor. While in head form, her terror radius is increased to 40 meters, her movement speed is increased to 120, she has access to headlong flight for mobility, intestinal whip to attack, and honestly a better third-person view than survivors have. In this form, she can no longer break pallets but can vault them, suffers a longer pallet stun duration, and can no longer obtain bloodlust. Her intestinal whip can be charged and released with a brief dash. If the survivor is leeched, successfully whipping them with her intestines will take a health state. If the survivor is not leeched, this attack will fill their leech meter by 1/3, but will not injure them. In head form, she can use headlong flight for mobility, which will increase her speed to 7 meters per second for up to 12 seconds or until the power is depleted. Survivors can interact with glowing fungus on the map to remove their leeched over time. The fungi numbers are still being fine-tuned, but there's a max amount that can be on the map at any time, and they spawn whenever the Krasue switches her body form. Survivors can see nearby fungi in a white aura. And that's a wrap. This video took me roughly, I'd say 200 hours to make, so if you enjoyed it or if there's anything new that you learned, I would love to hear about it down in the comments. I aimed for 100% accuracy and spent more time than I can count on research and playing every killer, but if I made a mistake, please help correct me down in the comments. I want to give a massive shout out to everyone who keeps the DbD wikis up to date and Nightlight for some of the stats I used for each of the killer cards. All sources and references are linked over in the description if you ever want to take that deep dive. Thank you so much for watching, and if you run into my nurse in the fog, may God have mercy on your soul. Until we meet again.